afternoon. Welcome to Bloomberg Quint, the top headlines of this hour. Markets extend gains and benchmarks advance nearly 1% each, and the Nifty moves back above the mark of 10,200. Broader markets also move in line. And Jet Airways snaps 3 days of gains to fall by as much as 4% after its profit fell by more than 90% in the second quarter. And SAIL sees smart gains after finalizing a 6,000 crore joint venture with ArcelorMittal to set up an automotive plant in the country. And the Corporate Affairs Ministry has moved the bankruptcy court asking the NCLT to take over the management control of Unitech, citing mismanagement and diversion of funds as per Bloomberg sources. Those are your top headlines. I am Agam Vakil. Up next is Hot Money with Darshan Mehta.
Hey Agam, thank you. Hello and welcome to Hot Money on Bloomberg Quint Live, India's first digital live streaming business news service. This is the show which gets you a complete wrap of all the stocks that are buzzing in trade. I'm Darshan Mehta. Joining us on the show, and let's welcome our experts, investment advisor Sharmila Joshi, Kalra of Target Investing, and Chokkalingam of Equinomics Research and Advisory. All of them join us on the show. Thank you all for joining us on the show. Today on Hot Money, the stocks that we'll be discussing will be stocks like Jet Airways, Lupin, Bharti Airtel, GM Breweries, and Engineers India. Let's talk about the first stock, and that is Jet Airways, one of the biggest laggards as far as trade is concerned. Company came out with numbers yesterday, not the most impressive. Profits were down 90%, EBITDA was down 31%, margins down to 15% versus 22%. If you're looking at it, the numbers were rather weak, but despite weak numbers, is it a good time to buy into Jet Airways or the aviation stocks? We'll ask our expert. Sharmila, I'll start with you. Any view on Jet Airways? What did you make of the numbers, and is it a good bet to play with Jet Airways going ahead?
Very honestly, aviation has never been a sector that I've liked too much, and I think the reason for that obviously has been crude prices, and the way the whole pricing mechanism was that always put a pressure on aviation. I think that has changed over the last 2 years, and we saw all these stocks beginning sort of a huge rally around that time, given which was also coupled with the fact that Kingfisher was out of the game. So the market was sort of consolidating with the 2 or 3 players left. But the point I'm trying to make is that now I think those positives are in the price. Okay. So and now you have crude prices going up. So I mean, yes, quarter numbers were weak. It's more than that. I think is the overall scenario that doesn't make me too positive on the stock. I think the only positive thing that I can really talk about the sector as a whole is the fact that numbers are still growing, and the kind of demand that there is much more than what capacity the 3 players have just now to offer. And on the other hand, I think not just for Jet Airways, but a lot of other stocks, you're almost beginning to treat them like a consumption play. So you're trying to give them those valuations. So you're no longer looking at it as an aviation business, but you're looking at it as a sort of a fast growing business, and you're trying to give it that kind of valuation. But that said, I think a lot of the positives are in the price. So I would really wait for a little bit more of a correction to really actually buy into the stock. Okay, so the entire sector, you're a little averse to the entire sector. What about you, Chokkalingam? Any view on Jet Airways or the aviation sector as such?
Aviation long term I am bullish, but Jet Airways I would give a strong sell. In fact, we initiated around 500 and closed the call at around 660. Now the result is extremely disappointing. Despite in terms of volume, the airline traffic growing in good double digit, this has grown the top line only at around 3%. So it clearly shows a lot of pricing pressure. Point number 2, as she was also mentioning, the oil price has gone up by 40% from 2017 bottom. From 2016 bottom, it has gone up by more than 100%. So that is going to impact, and there is no expectation of fall in the oil price in the short term because OPEC has extended the cut till 2018. Third, most importantly, the balance sheet gives me a little more worry because this has slightly worsened in this September. If you look at the debt and other current financial liabilities and other liabilities, they add up to around 18,000 crore. The top line is only around 21,000 crore. So if there is any crisis in terms of poor business growth or oil price spike, with this kind of balance sheet, it would be very difficult to manage. So therefore, at this price, it's a good sell. If it corrects close to below 600 or around 550, then one can consider.
Okay, and is this the view that you share for the entire aviation space or only for Jet? Because some of them
not by same proportion, because like Indigo, the balance sheet is much comfortable. So if you go by balance sheet, this will not be valid for a company like Indigo. But definitely entire aviation pack will have stress at least for another 2-3 quarters. So this is not the time to go aggressive in buying.
Okay, so two negative views that are coming in on Jet Airways. Samir, your view on aviation or Jet?
Aviation, I'm neutral. Jet, I'm negative. Mainly because, see, if you see the change in the rupee appreciation or depreciation, every 1% impacts the earnings by 3.5%. And every 1% of crude prices change impacts the earnings by 2%. So, Jet Airways on a standalone, if you see there this time quarter, the main issues were the other expenses increased 26-30%. On that, there were main two differences. So they've given loans and advances to Jet Light, which is a subsidiary. So they keep on having an impairment loss. So they give still additional loans, and incrementally they do an impairment loss on that. And second is the forex. So for them, forex is a major movement. So they are generally net importers. So that affects the hedging. So that is a major chunk of the losses which results in the other expenses. So that was this quarter around 70 crores. So that took a good margin out of them. If you see otherwise, I've been bullish on SpiceJet. So we had bought it in around 20 rupees that time. Because see, eventually, if you see the global pricing and even the OPEC, what they say, so they see maximum the crude going 70 or 60, between the 60 to 70, they all are comfortable. Now the only point is if you're not having that volume growth, that 60 to 70 dollars per crude will help you. Now, if you don't have that kind of a pricing issues, see what has happened, they are a full service airlines.
Yes.
Right. So any discount promotion hurts them more than a discount promotion at a Spice or an Indigo. So that's where they're getting hurt more. So that's why I think out of the three, Jet is the worst one as of now.
Okay.
For me.
And yeah.
So to just make a small point, which is actually a positive for that, is the deal they had with KLM and Air France. Because I think that's the way ahead really for a lot of these airlines globally. And if you travel anywhere, you will see that all flights are full. So there's no question there about, whether it is a domestic flight or whether it's international flights. All flights are full. And I think it's a lot of the international flights are full because of this code sharing. Okay. Because they already had a code sharing in place with Air France, and now they have one with KLM as well. So they'll be sharing codes across, these three airlines. So, their occupancy will always be good.
Okay. Samir, you want to make a
Actually, the KLM, what she's talking about, see these alliances, if you see global in the aviation sector, the international alliances don't reap up any profit to you.
Yeah.
They'll only help you out in expanding the routes. But the only point is the routes they are trying to enter. There are now European airlines who have started operating from Delhi or Bombay, which are giving around a 45% discount, or they are cheaper than the Jet or these international flights, which are direct. Like Italian Airlines is open from Delhi. So that costs around 30,000, which the same Jet or any other non-Italian, if you see, that costs around 60-65 grand. So that competition is also kicking in.
Okay.
So internationally it doesn't help out, but from my side, the risk of that forex becomes very huge for them, because if you see the quarterlies, they've not been able to well balance that hedging.
Okay. So that's the view on Jet Airways. The stock is at the day's low, and it's a consensus negative view that's coming in on Jet Airways at this point of time. The next stock is Lupin. Now, the reason we're talking about Lupin is that the promoters become rather active. Over the last almost 17 days, the promoters have bought in almost 8.5 lakh shares of the company, worthing comes to almost 70 crores. It's very small compared to their holding in the company, but nevertheless, sometimes promoter holding is seen as they believe that the worst could be over. We'll ask our guest, Sabir, do you think the worst is over for Lupin?
I don't think so. Okay. I'm clearly negative even though I'm positive on pharma's side, but I'm clearly negative on Lupin, because see the observations which everyone has got. they're the most severe ones. The observations they've got are the most severe ones. Even if you go back to 2015, there were a lot of observations which were serious in nature. So they were not data issues, they were more of process issues. So that affects, and that takes longer to get resolved, because the more severe it is, the more hardening it happens. So what has happened in all this pricing pressures, the exclusivity getting out in 2 or 3 products, from a debt, almost a less debt company, they've gone to a higher debt. So their interest cost before 2014 was around 26 crores, which has come to around 150 crores annually this year. So even if they start the recovery, the amount of debt will take you longer to recover from all of this. And when that exactly will happen, because what I see from the earnings call of the company as well, they are still not very optimistic of the pricing pressure getting out for them especially. And the exclusivity again hurts you very much, on the margin especially. Maybe not on the revenue side, but on the margin side it hurts you very badly. So that's why I'm a little negative. And as you said, the promoter buying, so it has only been 0.34% of the, so I don't think so that's a signal to get in the stock, because I would rather see a reduction of debt before I want to hop on the train.
Okay, Sharmila, any view on Lupin?
Well, I would broadly agree, especially with the US business bit, because all said and done, there the hit was that was a disappointing bit in this numbers, in the last quarter numbers. Otherwise, I think the numbers were okay. But that hit, and the fact that it was much more than was anticipated, and likely to hit their exclusivity, etc., on that one product, what they had predicted. So that I think is the bad news. But that again I think is bad news for a lot of stocks in the pharma space, especially those which cater to the US. So I think it's just that the stock has come to such a price, and then going forward I am little more optimistic than Samir is on their the fact that their complex generics could give them better traction in earnings growth, etc., going ahead, which make me neutral on the stock. But otherwise I would broadly agree that it has been a slightly disappointing, the observations as well as the US performance has been slightly disappointing.
Okay, Mr. Chokkalingam, you don't want to comment on Lupin because of certain compliance, but what's your view on the sector as such? Do you believe that, do you share the same negative view on the sector as such?
Definitely the view is negative, but if you ask me the magnitude of a view on the industry, I have a different view. Most, I mean, I'm not talking about Lupin at all for compliance reason. Most major players, they have been already punished largely. And second, historically, if you see the US FDA issue, roughly in 18 to 24 months, many companies have got their status back, normal status. If you take example of Wockhardt, at the peak of the fear, it was beaten down to 345. Same stock went to 2000. Then we saw Divi's Lab. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, the pricing pressure is going to be there, but it has been punished more than what many companies have deserved.
Okay, there's some news that's coming in, breaking news in terms from Brexit. We'll just go through that. EU and UK reach a Brexit deal, opening way for trade talks. So that's something that's just coming in from Europe, and that is something that Bloomberg has reported. Let's just see what they're saying.
To the European Council that sufficient progress has now been made on the strict terms of the divorce. Es wurden genügend Fortschritte erzielt, damit wir jetzt in die zweite Phase der Verhandlungen eintreten können. Nous avons pu faire les progrès suffisants pour que désormais nous puissions entrer en deuxième phase de la négociation entre le Royaume-Uni et l'Union européenne à 27. The decision on sufficient progress will be in the hands of the 27 heads of state or government. I'm hopeful, sure, confident, sure that they will share our appraisal and allow us to move on the next phase of the negotiations. On last Monday, I also met with the European Parliament representatives. From the start of this process, cooperation between the European Parliament and the Commission has been close, and our position closely aligned. These negotiations can only be successful if we take an inclusive approach. That's exactly what we did. Without going into all the detail, allow me to touch on what today's agreements mean in practice. Later on today, after 9:30, my friend Michel Barnier will be available to explain all the details of the agreement we reached today. A few remarks on citizens' rights. First, in this negotiation, citizens have always come first. It has been a great importance for the Commission to make sure that EU citizens in the UK will be protected after the UK leaves the European Union. EU citizens have made important life choices on the assumption that the United Kingdom was a member of the European Union. Brexit created great uncertainty for those citizens and for their families. Today, we bring back the certainty. The Commission's negotiators have made sure that the choices made by the EU citizens living in the UK will be protected. We have made sure that their rights will remain the same after the UK has left the European Union. This is in particular the case for EU citizens' right to live, work and study, EU citizens' right to family reunification, the protection of the right of EU citizen children, and the right to health care, pensions and other social security benefits. We have made sure that the administrative procedures will be cheap and will be simple. This is an issue for which the Commission will pay particular attention when drafting the withdrawal agreement. The same goes for UK citizens living in the EU27. On the settling of accounts, the Prime Minister said in her remarkable Florence speech that the United Kingdom would honour its commitments, including beyond 2020. This was a detailed line-by-line process, but she has been as good as her word. She was negotiating in a gentleman manner, and I'm very grateful, Prime Minister, for that. On Ireland, the EU has consistently supported the goal of peace and reconciliation enshrined in the Good Friday Agreement. The European Union has made it a priority to protect the peace process on the island. I have been in regular contact with the Taoiseach over the last days, including last night, and including last negotiations we had in the course of yesterday with our Irish friends. The UK has made significant commitments on the avoidance of a hard border after its withdrawal from the European Union. All of the EU27 stand firmly behind Ireland.
Okay, the next stock that we'll talk about is Bharti Airtel. The counter was on a tear yesterday, up almost 6%. A lot of analysts are still in Africa because the company has an analyst meet in Africa. They are showcasing their Africa business. So some positive comments coming in from the day one of the analyst meet in terms of how they plan to turn around the entire company. The company has been a marked outperformer, up almost 60% this year, and the actual gain started when Reliance Jio came out with their numbers and reported a positive EBIT. So is the turnaround real for the company? Chokkalingam, let's start with you. What about Airtel? Is the turnaround real, or one should stay away from?
It has done very well, but I would sell the stock and rather buy stock like Infratel for a few reasons. One, on 1 year forward earning, it is quoting beyond 40 PE. And voice penetration, mobile penetration has peaked out in this country. The incremental growth is going to be limited. And third, a lot of competition coming from even the social media like Facebook, Skype, WhatsApp. I mean, hardly anybody uses the traditional mobile phone to make calls outside the country. And also the market is oligopolistic. Now, after Arcam's debacle, now you have a very strong player, So going forward, the competition in this oligopolistic market is going to be very fierce, and there will be a lot of pressure on the margin. So therefore, I think it has already played out fairly. The valuations are stretched now. So rather, I would shift to stock like a Bharti Infratel, which is trading at around 22, 23 P on 1 year forward earning, with a lot of cash on the book without any debt.
Okay, Sharmila, do you think pricing pressure will be there, or again competition will hit them again?
Well, honestly, I think, just as we spoke in the case of Jet, there has been a consolidation of sorts even in this sector, because now you'll be left with three big players, essentially Vodafone, Jio and Airtel and everybody else will have to align themselves accordingly. So according to me, it should in fact become much more, it should get rationalized sort of, because I don't think that you can undercut each other endlessly. That number one. And number two, I think the only other take I have is that the way I see data usage going up, I think that's going to be exponential, because all of them are now looking for other devices also. It is not just, to be on your mobile, but, there are other devices that they want to be on, whether it's connected to your TV or for entertainment, or they deal with Juggernaut, for instance, recently Bharti Airtel. So they are all sort of looking at other avenues to capture your sort of usage rather than just using it as a telephone. I mean, there are very few people who are really using a mobile phone as a phone anymore. So to that extent, I'm positive on the sector, but I think the price run up here has been pretty sharp.
Okay.
So from that point, only from the price point, I'm neutral on this.
Okay. So again, valuation seems to be the concern for both Chokkalingam and Sharmila. What about you?
See, for me, right now they're having a Africa analyst meet and all. So yesterday they said that we'll have around a $200 million kind of free cash flow. So $1 billion is their revenue and 600, 700 is their capex, which they do annually. So they accepted in a certain way the mistake which they have done, and they are trying to consolidate into that. So they are even looking at a newer acquisition in Nigeria, which will make them a topmost, slightly above MTN, which is today a top ranker in the African nations. Now the part to India, see, I don't see this pricing pressure going out in near term, because what has happened, same time they announced this, the very same time in India they announced that their plans which were giving 1.5 GB per day goes to a 2 GB per day. So there's another, that 30%, 40% costing issue again came in. So, and everyone's talking about the consolidation. My only point is, see, if you see Reliance are more, Jio are more consumed as a second phone for people. There has rarely been, especially in my circle of what I see through people, that they've given up a Airtel connection or a Vodafone connection to shift to a Jio. So I don't think so that kind of a comparison works, and it won't go out in the near term.
Okay.
It can go out when everyone's done and dusted with it, but I don't see that pressure going out in the recent times.
Okay.
So I am a little negative on Bharti and Telecom. I rather play it through Reliance.
Okay. So that's the view that's coming in on Bharti Airtel. No positive views actually coming in for Bharti at this point of time. So Chokkalingam says that it's better to shift to a Bharti Intratel, and Samir believes that it's better to shift to a Reliance rather than play Bharti. Sharmila talked about the high valuations at this point of time. Before we move on, here's a quick recap of all the guest views on the stocks that we have covered till now. Okay, the next stock that we'll talk about is a small company called GM Breweries, a market cap of 12,000 crores, of 1,200 crores, zero debt, but a cash-rich company. But the move after the second quarter numbers has been stellar. It's up almost, actually doubled ever since it came out with its quarter second numbers. So let's talk about, is it a good bet? What next? Is there more room to go? Sharmila, any view on GM Breweries?
See, I think the entire space went up, especially after you got that clarification on that highway notification. So I think every stock within that sector has done well. My only issue with GM Breweries is, one is of course, the fact that it's really a small size player in that sense. Numbers were definitely good, quarter two numbers were definitely good. But this whole prominent space in this country liquor business, and what kind of valuation to give it, because you're talking of sort of very high volume, low margin kind of business over there. So, and the fact that valuations have now caught up, as you said, the stock has doubled. So that's my only concern really. The valuations is my concern on the stock, and the fact that I don't know what exact valuation to give the specific business GM Breweries is in.
Okay. So what about you, Chokkalingam?
On any further rise, I will suggest sell. Okay. It's a small cap and the promoter stake is very high. The market float is very small.
Yes.
So such stocks have a huge volatility. Even GM Breweries used to trade at even 17, 24 rupees, 10 rupees stocks. There used to be a lot of volatility, and also it has got a significant presence in country liquor, which are normally not valued at a premium level. So, and current year PE also expected to be around 23, 24. So it's not cheap. And considering all these facts, one should start selling for every rise.
Okay, Samir does not have a view, but very quickly, the consensus view is not positive on GM Breweries. It's run up significantly and valuations do not match now. The final stock, very quickly, Engineers India. This counter has also rallied significantly over the past few months, but what's the traction? We'll speak to our guest about it. Engineers India, Samir, what do you make of Engineers India?
I'm pretty bullish on the stock, given the 2,500 crore cash they have sitting on the books. Second, if you see this quarter results, the main positive was their turnkey projects. So they have two parts. One is the consultancy part and the other is the turnkey. Consultancy always had a good amount of margins, around 20-25%. The main drag was the turnkey projects. So if there's a slowdown in that kind of area, it hurts your working capital cycle, which eventually hurts your margins. So this quarter, they have almost doubled Y-on-Y on the same quarter, the turnkey revenues and the profit, a bit from there. So that has contributed on the consolidated number as such. And I think there is some talk going on of merging around 6 government consultancy firms to Engineers India to consolidate the whole system and make it more diversified. So right now their major product is hydrocarbons. And from my side, the BS6 norms and the city gas distribution, which is IGL and everyone, that kind of projects in future will help them before it helps BPCL or IGL in that sense, because they are into consultancy of that. So the more capex they do, and they charge as a percentage of the capex. So the more capex they do as a percentage, even if you take into that sense, they have a huge order book going on, which I think will grow like massively. Because last few years the OMC capex has been low in a certain.
Okay, so it's a bullish call, Sharmila, very quickly on Engineers India.
Yeah, I would be neutral, and I think that, just as we were talking for GM Breweries, you don't know what valuation to give. I think the same applies here, but for a different reason, because it's a very niche sort of a company, and the kind of turnkey projects as well as consultancy work that they take up are not something that you see anybody else like walking in and getting those orders. So I think to that extent they are definitely protected. The order book that they're sitting on is great at this point in time. And just to take off from what Samir said about earnings, their execution etc. is looking better. So there is a great chance that going ahead margins could also look good. And apart from the refinery and that kind of business, Namami Ganga could also give them some orders. So things are looking good, but I think that I would wait to see a little bit of it in the numbers before going becoming positive.
Yeah, same. I would agree with her view that I am on neutral. In fact, we initiated around 90, we exited around 130, adjusted for bonus. The point is that the cash has been already extracted by the government. Today, the cash is only 14% of the market cap. It trades around 28p on current year, so which is not cheap. But good point is that strong balance sheet. Any long-term investor want to hold, they can hold, or they can even buy on decline, because the oil and gas space in India is going through tremendous capex plans. So that's one long-term positive. Otherwise, in the short to medium term, I am neutral.
Okay, so two neutral views that are coming in on Engineers India, but Samir is extremely bullish. He has a bullish recommendation for Engineers India. Sorry. Before we wrap up on the show, here's a quick recap of all the guest views on the stocks that we've covered till now. Okay, Chokkalingam, Sharmila, Samir, thank you so much for joining us on the show. With that, it's a wrap on today's Hot Money. Ask BQ comes up next. Stay tuned to Bloomberg.
Are we live?